first time in 15 years, a president of the United States was making an official visit to Texas. The wind was blowing and the weather was threatening when President John F. Kennedy and his wife arrived late Thursday night at Fort Worth's Carswell Air Force Base. It was Thursday, November 21st, 1963. The inclement weather would not keep citizens of Fort Worth from coming out in throngs to greet him. They lined the street outside the Hotel Texas, where he would spend his last night. In the morning, he made an impromptu appearance outside in the hotel parking lot. He wanted to accommodate those who were unable to fit inside the grand ballroom for the presidential breakfast. And even though there was a light rain falling, the president would refuse a topcoat.
Welcome to your action. That's Mrs. Kennedy coming in.
When the president spoke, he gave his audience the message they wanted to hear. He was backing General Dynamics' bid for the TFX fighter plane. It would later be known as the F-111. And the government contract would salvage Fort Worth's economy.
3 years ago, last September, I came here on Vice President and spoke at Burke Burnett Park. And I called in that speech for national security policy and a national security system which was second to none. A position which said not first but, if, when, and how, but first. That city responded to that call as it has through its history. And we have been putting that pledge into practice ever since. And I want to say a word about that pledge here in Fort Worth, which understands national defense and its importance to the security of the United States. During the days of the Indian War, this city was a fort. During the days of World War I, even before the United States got into the war, Royal Canadian Air Force pilots were training here. During the days of World War II, the great Liberator bombers, of which my brother flew with his co-pilot from this city, were produced here. First non-stop flight around the world took off and returned here in a plane built in factories here. The first truly intercontinental bomber, the B-36, was produced here. The B-58, which is the finest weapon system in the world today, which it demonstrated most recently in flying from Tokyo to London, with an average speed of nearly 1,000 miles per hour, is a Fort Worth product. The Iroquois helicopter from Fort Worth is a mainstay in our fight against the guerrillas in South Vietnam. The transportation of crews between our missile sites is done in planes produced here in Fort Worth. So wherever the confrontation may occur, and in the last 3 years it's occurred at least 3 occasions, in Laos, in Berlin, and in Cuba, and it will again. Wherever it occurs, the products of Fort Worth and the men of Fort Worth provide us with a sense of security. And in the not too distant future, a new Fort Worth product. And I'm glad that there was a table separating Mr. Hicks and myself, a new Fort Worth product. The TFX, Tactical Fighter Experimental. Nobody knows what those words mean, but that's what they mean. Tactical Fighter Experimental will serve the forces of freedom and will be the #1 airplane in the world today. There's been a good deal of discussion of the long and hard-fought competition to win the TFX contract, but very little discussion about what this plane will do. It will be the first operational aircraft ever produced that can literally spread its wings through the air. It will thus give us a single plane capable of carrying out missions of speed as well as distance, able to fly very far in one form or very fast in another. It can take off from rugged, short airstrips, enormously increasing the Air Force's ability to participate in limited wars. The same basic plane will serve the Navy's carriers, saving the taxpayers at least $1 billion in cost if they build separate planes for the Navy and the Air Force. The government of Australia, by purchasing $125 billion of TFX planes before they are even off the drawing board has already testified to the merit of this plane, and at the same time, it's confident in the ability of Fort Worth to meet its schedule. In all these ways, the success of our national defense depends upon this city in the western United States, 10,000 miles from Vietnam, 5,000 or 6,000 miles from Berlin, thousands of miles from trouble spots in Latin America and Africa or the Middle East. And yet Fort Worth and what it does and what it produces participates in all these great historic events. Texas as a whole and Fort Worth bear particular responsibility for this national defense effort. For military procurement in this state totals nearly $1.25 billion, fifth highest among all the states of the Union. There are more military personnel on active duty in this state than any in the nation, save one. And it's not Massachusetts. Any in the nation, save one, with a combined military-civilian defense payroll of well over $1 billion. I don't recite these for any partisan purpose. They're the result of American determination to be second to none. And as a result of the effort which this country has made in the last 3 years, we are second to none. In the past 3 years, we have increased the defense budget of the United States by over 20%, increased the program of acquisition for Polaris submarines from 24 to 41, increased our Minuteman missile purchase program by more than 75%, doubled the number of strategic bombers and missiles on alert, doubled the number of nuclear weapons available in the strategic alert forces, increased the tactical nuclear forces deployed in Western Europe by over 60%, added 5 combat-ready divisions to the armies of the United States and 5 tactical fighter wings to the Air Force of the United States, increased our strategic airlift capability by 75%, and increased our special counterinsurgency forces, which are engaged now in South Vietnam, by 600%. I hope those who want a strong America and place it on some signs will also place those figures next to it. This is not an easy effort. This requires sacrifice by the people of the United States. But this is a very dangerous and uncertain world. As I said earlier, on 3 occasions in the last 3 years, the United States has had a direct confrontation. No one can say when it will come again. No one expects that our life will be easy. Certainly not in this decade, and perhaps not in this century. But we should realize what a burden and responsibility the people of the United States have borne for so many years. Here, a country which lived in isolation, divided and protected by the Atlantic and the Pacific, uninterested in the struggles of the world around it. Here, in the short space of 18 years after the Second World War, we put ourselves by our own will and by necessity into defensive alliances with countries all around the globe. Without the United States, South Vietnam would collapse overnight. Without the United States, the SEATO alliance would collapse overnight. Without the United States, the CENTO alliance would collapse overnight. Without the United States, there would be no NATO, and gradually Europe would drift into neutralism and indifference. Without the effort of the United States and the Alliance for Progress, the communist advance onto the mainland of South America would long ago have taken place. So this country, which desires only to be free, which desires to be secure, which desires to live at peace, for 18 years, under 3 different administrations, has borne more than its share of the burden, has stood watch for more than its number of years. I don't think that we are fatigued or tired. We would like to live as we once lived, but history will not permit it. The communist balance of power is still strong. The balance of power is still on the side of freedom. We are still the keystone and the arch of freedom, and I think we'll continue to do as we have done in our past, our duty, and the people of Texas will be in the lead. So I'm glad to come. I'm glad to come to this state which has played such a significant role in so many efforts in this century, and to say that here in Fort Worth, you people will be playing a major role in the maintenance of the security of the United States for the next 10 years. I'm confident, as I look to the future, that our chances for security, our chances for peace, are better than they've been in the past. And the reason is because we're stronger. And with that strength is a determination to not only maintain the peace, but also the vital interests of the United States. To that great cause, Texas and the United States are committed. Thank you.
The sun began breaking through the clouds as the presidential motorcade left the Hotel Texas en route to Carswell Air Force Base. Once again, crowds lined the streets to catch a glimpse of the Kennedys. And at Carswell, the president and Mrs. Kennedy took time out to shake hands and sign autographs before boarding Air Force One for a quick 8-minute trip to Dallas. There, they were to attend a luncheon at the Trade Mart. At Love Field, it was the same scene once again. The president would disembark and head straight for the crowds. Channel 8's news director, Bob Walker, described the event for the broadcast pool.
There's Mrs. Kennedy, and the crowd yells. Shaking hands now with the Dallas people, Governor and Mrs. Connally. Governor Connally on your left. Mr. Eric Johnson in the official welcoming party. Mr. Connally shaking hands with Dr. Berkner. The president now partially obscured behind his wife and a big bouquet of flowers. Working their way slowly, Judge Barefoot Sanders meeting the president, who gave him a pat on the shoulder. Judge Lou Sterrett now just visible. Governor Connally with his arm around the president. Kennedy backs up and waits for the president, who stopped to chat with some of the people greeting him here. Crowd waving, as you can see. People standing up all over everything available to get a glimpse of the president and his wife. Cheering and yelling going on down the way as they approach the cars. Beautiful break in the weather. Just a beautiful break in the weather. Clear blue sky and a warm sun. Nixon has gone home for the benefit of that person with the sign. He left at 9:05 this morning. The vice president, former vice president, was in town yesterday. Crowds forming around the president and first lady. That's the official party, not the general public, who is not allowed out beyond the restraining fence here at Love Field. Now I am heading over to the car. Partially obscured from our sight at the moment. People breaking away now, running over to get behind other fences to catch a better glimpse of the caravan as it will leave here shortly and go to downtown Dallas. The president is up to the fence now, shaking hands with people. The president and his wife are right up on the fence. The press is standing up high, getting a lot of shots of this. He's done as he has done in several places. He's broken away from his plan and gone right up to the fence to shake hands with people. This is great for the people and makes the eggshells even thinner for the Secret Service, whose job it is to guard the man. But the audience loves this. Mrs. Kennedy's beautiful pillbox hat was the only thing that gave it away. I saw the hat, and I knew they were there. And, of course, the press going high and shooting right down below as the president and his wife kind of moving along the gate. People yelling at them, people running on the inside now trying to come down to this end of the gate, this end of the fenced-off area, hoping that the president and his wife will move along the fence. People out with cameras just holding him up and snapping away and hoping to get a picture out of their very own camera of the president and his wife. Still walking along that inside fence, shaking hands, talking with people who have come out to greet him. They didn't expect this. Now as he becomes more visible down to this end, the people cheer. And here they come, right down toward us. I can see Mrs. Kennedy.
And I look back over to my left, and also President Kennedy looked back over his left shoulder. Then when the second shot came, I looked back just in time to see the president struck in the face by the second bullet. He swung forward, and Miss Kennedy laughed. And apparently that we were being fired upon, went ahead of the president's car to inform Chief Curry that the president had been hit. And then he instructed us over there to take him to Parkland Hospital, and he had Parkland Hospital stand by. I went on up ahead of notify the officers that were leading the escort that he had been hit and was going to have to move out. You did not see the person who fired the shot? No, sir. It was back over my right shoulder.
The president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat. They had a little dog between them looking at it. And just as the car came right in line with us, the president looked up. And just as he looked up, 2 shots rang out. And he grabbed his chest, and this real odd look came over his face, and he pitched forward onto her lap. And she jumped up over him at that and screamed and said, "My God, he's been shot." And there was just an instantaneous, sort of an instant's pause, and in the motorcade it momentarily halted. And 3 or 4 more shots rang out, and they sped away real quickly. And by that time, I became aware of Mary tugging on my foot, saying, "Get down, they're shooting." And it hadn't registered. I'd been so busy looking at the president.
So you were in a very advantageous spot to see the president.
To see the president, but also to get shot.
Slumped. Jackie Kennedy was leaning towards him to see. I guess it all happened so suddenly. I don't think anyone realized, what had happened.
Did you realize what had happened when you heard the shots?
No, I didn't. There was 3 or 4 real close together, and it was must have been the first one that shot him, because that was the time I took the picture. And during that time, after I took the picture, and the shots were still being fired, I decided I'd better get on the ground.
Did people lie down on the ground?
I just know about myself and the ones right close to me. Really, I just know about myself.
You did lie down?
I did. I was no more than 15 foot from the car and in line of fire, evidently.
Did Mrs. Kennedy scream on the first shot?
I don't know about the first shot, but she did scream. She says, "My God, he's been hit," or "He's been shot."
And the president fell in Mrs. Kennedy's arms?
No, I think he just slumped into the seat. She jumped up over him, and during the time when she jumped up, of course, the car sped away real fast.
The president's car was some 50 feet still yet. In front of us coming towards us, and we heard the first shot, and the president, I don't know who was hit first, but the president jumped up in his seat, and I thought it scared him. I thought it was a firecracker, because he looked, fear. And then as the car got directly in front of us, well, a gunshot apparently from behind us hit the president in the side of the temple.
Do you think the first gunshot came from behind you too?
I think it came from the same location. Apparently back up on the mall. I don't know what you call it.
For the benefit of nomenclature, all you folks have gone out under the viaduct, and as you turn, going under the viaduct on the left-hand side, there's some grass. Do you think the shot came from up on top of the viaduct toward the president? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Not on the viaduct itself, but up on top of the hill, a little mound of ground in the garden.
How far away would you say that is from where the president was? A couple of 300 yards, something like that?
Well, I have no idea, because I didn't see where the gunshot come from. We were looking directly at the president when he was hit. Mm-hmm. And he was more or less directly in front of us, and we didn't realize what happened until we seen the side of his head whenever the bullet hit him in the head.
Did you see the blood
I seen
the president's head?
Yes, sir. I don't know if my wife did, I seen that.
Were you in the line of fire? I remember vividly whenever I walked over and looked over the banister there and saw across the street that you were down on the ground so that to keep out of the line of fire. What was the first thought that struck your mind?
I thought it was a firecracker, and I saw the blood, and I had the baby, and I just ran, and I got on top of him and laid on the grass. It just scared me. It was terrible.
Did you see anyone else hit besides the...
Governor Connally was kind of turned to the side, and he grabbed his stomach.
Do you have any idea which direction the shots came from that hit the president or Connally? Did you say that one of the shots came from one direction and one from another, it seemed like?
No, sir. Actually, I feel that they both come from directly behind where we were standing.
Right behind you.
The president, it looked like he was looking in that direction. I don't know whether he was hit first. Apparently he wasn't. It looked like he jumped up in his seat, and when he jumped up, well, he was shot directly in the head. And I don't know what you call it, the mall behind us, but apparently that's
where he was. I know that a few minutes after that, when I came over there and asked you people if you would be kind enough to come over and be on our station today, I know that the police were all taking off up the ramp and over.
Everybody was going in that direction.
Toward the railroad.
Yes, sir.
Cars back over in there.
I just hope the man that shot the president, I just hope they don't kill him. I hope he lives. I hope he just lives to regret what he did.
Yeah, can I have your name?
J. Sawyer.
And your position?
Inspector, please.
What is the story here now? This is apparently the building that the assassin shot from.
This is the building that the witnesses said they had seen a man up there, and some with a rifle. And also we found some empty rifle shells on the 5th floor.
So he would have been directly above us?
Directly above us. Indications were that he had been there for some time.
Has the police department taken any precautions against such an incident?
We thought we had taken all of the precautions that were necessary. But this particular building was not covered as were a lot of other buildings.
Well, as it stands now, there is a suspect. There were witnesses.
There are witnesses, it's all the man.
What did they see as far as the president and the governor?
Well, several witnesses saw him slump over.
The president?
Yes.
And the governor?
And the governor, yes.
You also understand the Secret Service man who did?
This I do not know. I haven't received that information.
This is WFAA TV in Dallas, Texas. May I have your name, please, sir?
My name is Abraham Zapruder.
Mr. Zapruder?
Zapruder, yes, sir.
Zapruder. And would you tell us your story, please, sir?
I got out and about a half hour earlier to get a good spot to shoot some pictures. And I found a spot, one of these concrete blocks that I have down near that park near the underpass. And I got on top there was another girl from my office. She was right behind me. And as I was shooting, as the president was coming down from Houston Street making his turn, it was about halfway down there, I heard a shot. and he slumped to the side like this. Then I had another shot or two. I couldn't say what it was, one or two. And I saw his head practically open up, all blood and everything. And I kept on shooting. That's about all. I'm just sick.
The presidential limousine sped to Parkland Hospital. There, doctors worked in vain to save the life of John Kennedy. He is pronounced dead an hour later. A hearse transports the president's body to Love Field. On board Air Force One, Lyndon Johnson is sworn in as the 36th President of the United States. Then the presidential jet takes off for Washington. It is dark at Andrews Air Force Base when the plane bearing the slain president's body arrives in the nation's capital.
The van that you see, we are assuming is the vehicle in which the president's body, this is undoubtedly the casket that is being brought forth. And from the vantage point that he has down there, ABC's Dick Bate will continue the commentary.
Now, accompanied by Secret Service men, it is on a truck, the body of which rises up in the air on a hydraulic lift. This truck has been lifted up to the side of the plane, the back door of the plane. The bronze casket has been pulled off the plane and is now on the bed of the truck. The body of President Kennedy is back in Washington. On board this same plane, we're told, is President Johnson. Mrs. Kennedy is supposed to be on the plane as well. The body of the truck has now been lowered down to ground level on hydraulic lift. The bronze casket aboard it. A Navy ambulance is pulling up. The bronze casket carrying President Kennedy's body will be taken from here to Bethesda Naval Hospital. We're told that sometime tomorrow, President Kennedy's body will be taken to the White House for private ceremonies for the family. Then the plan called for President Kennedy's body to be taken to the Capitol Rotunda, for public viewing sometime Sunday. Secret Service escort now lifting the bronze casket off the truck, bringing it down onto the field of Andrews Air Force Base. A Navy honor guard alongside the hospital. Catch a glimpse of President Johnson, who's supposed to be on this same plane. The word here from the Pentagon is that President Johnson will have a statement to make here at the Air Force. Officials at the Department of Defense were in touch with the aircraft by radio as it made its way back to Washington from Texas. Now the steps have been rolled up to the same back door of the jet airliner. President Johnson is expected to come down in just a moment. Coming down the steps now down on the ground. Mrs. Johnson with him. President Johnson coming over to the microphone, accompanied by military aides, Secret Service men. Security precautions here at the airport have been redoubled tonight. President Johnson has called a special meeting of congressional leaders. We're told there's a possibility of a cabinet meeting at the White House tonight. members of cabinet here at the airport, members of the diplomatic colony in Washington, and a crowd of average citizens who turned out to pay their respects to President Kennedy's return to Washington. The ambulance carrying the casket has gone on into the city, and President Johnson is now before the microphone for his first public statement as President of the United States.
Mrs. Johnson is beside him, the First Lady now. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we take you to the microphones, and in the background of the noise here, they're still standing, the pictures are being taken. He is not ready to speak at the moment. We will watch and see just as soon as he is ready to speak. Another word is being given to him at the present time. And Lyndon Johnson is still standing there. They're looking at the plane and people gathered around the officials. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
There's a spare time for all.
In Dallas, police converged on the Texas Theater in Oak Cliff. A policeman had been shot and witnesses had reported the suspect entering the theater. There, officers apprehended Lee Harvey Oswald.
Well, I walked into the rear exit after a person had pointed out a person had run into the theater in a suspicious way. And there was about 15 people inside the theater at the time. And there's one person sitting back there alone near the rear of the theater. And as I approached him about 1 foot from him, he jumped out of his seat and held his hands up and says, "This is it." And he hit me in the face with his fist, blooding my nose, and I immediately grabbed him, and he went for his gun that was in his waist. And I went at the same time, and we were struggling in there, and I received a scratch on my cheek, evidently from the hammer of the gun as it came out of his belt. And as it was coming out, he snapped the trigger on the pistol, which misfired, luckily.
Was the pistol loaded?
Yes, fully loaded. Had 6 rounds in it.
Had you ever had an experience like this before?
Well, not this desperate, no, sir.
What was his mental state at the time of capture? Was he hysterical or screaming or?
He was cool and calm up until the time that he made that jump for me. And the whole time I watched him, as I approached him, he was calm. He didn't move, he didn't flinch.
Just as I got to the back of the theater, I noticed the scuffling that was going on between Patrolman McDonald and this suspect. I immediately, in some way, I don't know how, I sprained my ankle in getting over the seats to aid Patrolman McDonald, but in aiding him, I twisted my ankle, causing some severe strain to my ankle. At the time I got a hold of the suspect, Patrolman Donald was scuffling with him, trying to get the gun away from him. And by the time we got him pretty well subdued, we had the assistance of 4 or 5 other patrolmen and other officers.
I believe the crutches behind me are evidence of the injuries you suffered in yesterday's capture. What would be your description of the suspect at the time?
At the time I encountered the suspect, of course, he was resisting and fighting and scuffling with Patrolman McDonald, and of course, scuffling with the rest of us. He was subdued and handcuffed and was making several remarks as we removed him from the theater out to the squad waiting to transport him down to Homicide and Robbery Bureau. I accompanied the officers to Homicide and Robbery Bureau in the squad and talked with the suspect on the way to the City Hall. His comment was, "Why are you placing me in jail when all I have done is carried a pistol into a theater?" We explained to him that he was being placed in jail for suspicion of murder regarding the patrolman J.D. Tippett.
He stated he had not shot anyone at that time and became very belligerent on the way to the city hall. We advised him that he could do his talking a little bit later. He was then taken and turned over to Captain Fritz.
You made no mention to him of the possible charges of murdering the president at that time?
No, sir, I did not myself, because at the time of the arrest, I had no knowledge whatsoever that this might possibly be our suspect in regards to the assassination of the president.
Someone saw him going to Texas Theater. A search was made of that later by a number of police officers. At the time, an officer of the Dallas police hunted him and asked him to come out. He struck at the officer, put the gun against his head, and snapped it, but did not, the bullet did not go off. We have the snapped bullet there. Officer subdued him at that time.
Was that an attempt suicide, sir?
Against the officer's head.
You know why the gun didn't
McDonald was his name. It snapped. It was a misfire. Then officers subdued him. Some 6 officers subdued him there in the theater, and he was brought to the police station too. His fingerprints were found on the gun. And I said that on the rifle.
What about the parapet test?
Yes, I haven't gone in that. Parapet test showed that he had recently fired a gun. It was on both hands.
On both hands?
Both hands. A gun.
The rifle fingerprints were his?
Yes.
Were there any fingerprints?
Print read the fingerprint.
Were there any fingerprints at the window?
On the 6th floor of the schoolbook depository, police found a high-powered rifle equipped with a scope, and they linked it to Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald was an ex-Marine who had defected to Russia. He was a self-proclaimed Marxist who had worked for the fair...
No, we're not sure if that was Oswald. They believe that might have been the man who did the shooting. His shirt is ripped apart. Oswald is on the floor.
Is he alive, Doctor?
No.
Let Dr. Science make his statement, please.
When did he die, Doctor?
He died at 1:07 our time, 13:07, of his gunshot wound. Would you like to ask questions or what? Yeah, Mr. Oswald died at 1:07 our time in the operating room of the gunshot wound which he received.
Would you describe his last moments on the operating table, Steve?
The last moments were rather hectic. He had a cardiac arrest from all the massive blood loss, the massive injury. The last few minutes were spent in cardiac resuscitation, open heart massage, electrical defibrillation, internal defibrillation, and finally there were absolutely no signs of life at all, 6 dilated pupils and all the signs of death.
And now, let's talk to some of the people who have come here today. What do you think about the shooting today of the suspected assassin, Lee Oswald?
I think it's extremely regrettable. I believe the dignity of our country would have been preserved if he had had the right of trial by jury, which is what President Kennedy stood for.
You seem very emotionally involved in this, are you?
Well, I'm not used to speaking into a mic or any of this sort of thing, and I think we've all been emotionally involved.
There have been some people parading about town with signs that read, "Long live Jack Ruby." What do you think about that?
I think that should be left up to a jury to decide whether he should live or whether he should die.
I believe the same he does. That's what the laws are for.
Well, a consensus of opinion in this crowd at least, that the slaying of President Kennedy should have been dealt with by a jury in the American tradition. But by all odds, the people who come here today aren't overly concerned with today's killing. They are concerned with the death of a president widely beloved. Paul Good, ABC, Dallas.
Oswald's assailant was identified as Jack Ruby, a Dallas nightclub owner. He said he killed Oswald so Mrs. Kennedy would not have to suffer. On Monday morning, the entire nation would watch as the 35th President of the United States was eulogized. His body, borne by caissons, made its way down Pennsylvania Avenue from the Capitol, past the White House, and on to Arlington National Cemetery for the burial. After Monday, it was a time to find answers. A reenactment of the presidential motorcade took place. Ballistics experts came in to figure out just how the assassination took place. Was there more than one gunman? And where had the gunman or gunmen actually been when the shots were fired? Investigators began trying to find out if there was a connection between Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby, and to determine if the two had been part of a conspiracy.
Your boots are an important part of your life. At Wells Boot Center, we believe you deserve the perfect boot at the right price for every member of the family. Nothing feels or looks as good as a pair of boots from Wells Boot Center. With over 50,000 pairs in stock, the world's largest boot store has the perfect boots for everyone. And that's why Wells fits Texas.
The Dallas Intertribal Center is a Native American Indian organization committed to improving the health and well-being of Indian and non-Indian people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Through our facilities at 209 East Jefferson, we help as many families as we can. Only by working together and helping each other can we improve the living conditions of all races. Call us today at 941-1050 or Metro 263-1831.
They could be old or new, from stage or screen, famous or even forgotten. They're stars, and this week you'll see them shine on Entertainment Tonight.
You'll learn how Dorothy Hamill iced a new TV role, why Bette Midler almost pooped out, and shared Jonathan Winter's future vision. Plus, Henry Thomas after E.T., Morgan Fairchild's detour from Flamingo Road, and a week-long series on the moguls who made the stars. All this week on Entertainment Tonight.
Monday after the update. Since the founding of SMU, the generosity of Dallas citizens has made possible a strong and lasting partnership. The city constitutes a living laboratory of diverse learning experiences for SMU students. And the university has made significant contributions to the city through its outstanding graduates. A strong and mutually beneficial bond exists between Dallas and SMU partners.
Tuesday, November 26, 1963. Life must go on for America and her people. The past 4 days have seen the President of the United States gunned down, a new president sworn in. The president's accused assassin has himself been shot to death, and the nation has paid its respects to its fallen leader. Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry announces that he plans to release all the material in the Oswald case when it is completed. And before the week is over, Jack Ruby will be indicted by the Dallas County Grand Jury. And the people of Dallas will begin asking themselves why it all had to happen here.
Ruby made no appearance in court today as he was indicted for murder with malice, a charge that could bring his execution. D.A. Henry Wade explained.
The Dallas County Grand Jury met this morning at 8:30, heard evidence against Jack Rubenstein, alias Jack Ruby, for the murder of Lee Oswald. He was indicted. The indictment's returned to Judge Joe B. Brown's court. It's been set down for a hearing on December the 9th. This is a most aggravated killing and assassination, the case in which we will ask the death penalty and think that's the only proper punishment.
Ruby's defense plans were told to ABC's Bill Lord by attorney Tom Howard.
In my opinion, based on the evidence as I know it now, Jack Ruby should go free, based on his mental condition as it was at the time I talked to him shortly after the shooting.
Does this indicate that you will enter a plea of temporary insanity?
Well, I don't want to say yes or no, but certainly that's under consideration.
For the city of Dallas, a return to near normal today. Mayor Earl Cabell, before a packed council chamber, called for civic unity.
First views. But I call upon all of our citizens to enter into controversy without hatred, disagreement without disparagement. And I ask that we allow ourselves to be intolerant only with intolerance whenever we find it in our midst. I am convinced that the grievous events we have just endured can teach us the most profound lesson of all, that our best laid plans are not good enough without the benefit of a wisdom greater than our own.
A city saddened but still proud. Roger Sharp, ABC, Dallas.
Jack Ruby will later stand trial in Dallas, where he will be convicted of Oswald's murder and assessed the death penalty.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have reached a verdict in this case. May I have it, Sheriff, please?
There is the verdict, Omebra handing it to the judge.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder with malice as charged in the indictment and assess his punishment at death. Signed, Max E. Causey, Foreman. So say you all, ladies and gentlemen. Is that your unanimous verdict? Will all of you whose verdict that is, please hold up your right hands. All right, Sheriff, you're prisoner.
But the court will be reversed, and a new trial set for Wichita Falls. Ruby will die of cancer before ever standing trial again, and the world will never know if he was part of some conspiracy.
The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motive. In other words, I'm the only person in the background that knows the truth pertaining to everything relating to my testimony.
Do you think it has come out?
No, because unfortunately, the people that had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come aboard to the world.
For the city of Dallas, there are questions concerning the police department and its handling of the past 4 days. City Councilman Joe Moody addresses that subject.
Now, the questions the people of Dallas would like to have answered, and I speak, I believe, for the majority of the citizens of Dallas, are the following regarding the death of Mr. Oswald. Number one, were our officers and detectives given instructions to restrict City Hall to entrance to authorized personnel only? If so, who gave those instructions? What specifically were those instructions? Were they violated? Who violated them? Why? What disciplinary action is to be taken? The whole world is watching us. They will judge us if we do not judge ourselves. And I don't feel like that the Attorney General or the Justice Department ought to come down here and take disciplinary action against our police department. I believe that if these words that we say are so fine, let's clean up our own house and let's do it within a matter of a few hours as we have done previously.
This is City Manager Elgin Krall. Mr. Krall, did you speak to the police chief this morning?
I talked to the chief of police and some of his senior officers this morning.
The rumor has been spread that he might resign.
I don't know where these rumors originate. They're completely unfounded. The chief has not offered to resign. He has not been asked to resign. And if he offered to resign, the offer would be declined. He is the chief of the department, and we expect him to continue to be the chief of the department.
How would you evaluate Mr. Curry as the chief of police?
He's one of the outstanding chiefs of police in the United States. And despite all the difficulties of the last few days, it hasn't changed his standing or his ability.
Yesterday's incident, would you say all necessary security precautions had been taken?
Yes. Obviously, I haven't any grounds to comment specifically on this. Obviously, some precaution wasn't taken because the man got in. Whether or not it's something that could have been foreseen, I'm not in a position to say.
Do you expect to receive any resignations from any members of the police department?
I don't expect to receive any resignations from the department. I expect the department to go ahead and do its job. It's one of the finest departments in the country. There have been some awful bad breaks, and they're hard on the men in the department, but it hasn't changed my estimate of the department, the quality of the men in it, in any way whatsoever.
Thank you very much, sir. The city manager of Dallas. This is Bill Lord reporting from the Dallas Police Headquarters.
The city of Dallas is also faced with the question of whether to erect a memorial for the slain president. There are several suggestions. Opinions vary. Dallas Mayor Earl Cabell says the memorial should be placed in the nation's capital.
Very frankly, I think that the memorial to the President of the United States should belong to all of the people of the United States. And that such a monument, as befits the late great President, should be erected in our national capital, where that automatically makes such a monument the property of all the people. It shall be my suggestion to the Park Board tomorrow that Dallas take the initiative, the people of Dallas take the initiative in starting a national citizens fund for the erection of a monument in our nation's capital. And in that way, we will initiate the movement, and then let that be then our contribution to the nation and to the people of the nation to start this fund for the erection of the monument in our national capital, where others of our great heroes are also properly enshrined and memorialized.
Texas Governor John Connally, who was also hit by the gunfire that struck down the president, is still in Parkland Hospital. For the first time, he talks about what happened to him in that motorcade.
I'm in Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas at the bedside of Governor John Connally, where he is recovering from his wounds. Governor Connally, what are your recollections of those terrible moments when you and President Kennedy were shot?
Martin, just before it occurred, of course, we'd had a great morning in Fort Worth, a magnificent breakfast. He spoke in a slight drizzle. We made the trip to Dallas, a huge throng along the way. We got into downtown Dallas. There were a tremendous crowd, real warmth, real understanding, real appreciation. And Nellie and I saw it so vividly because we were riding in the car with them. We did not attempt to acknowledge the obvious ovation that they were getting because we knew it was for the Kennedys. The reception has been magnificent. The president had remarked on it. So had Miss Kennedy. As a matter of fact, I guess not 30 seconds before the tragic incident occurred, Nellie had turned to the president and said, "Mr. President, they can't make you believe now that there are not some in Dallas who love you and appreciate you, can they?" And he said, "No, they sure can't." Okay? And then we had just turned the corner. We heard a shot. I turned to my left. I was sitting in the jump seat. I turned to my left to look in the back seat. The president had slumped. He had said nothing. Almost simultaneously, as I turned, I was hit. And I knew I'd been hit badly. And I said, I knew the president had been hit, and I said, "My God, they're going to kill us all." And then there was a third shot. And the president was hit again. And we thought then very seriously. I had still regained consciousness, but the president had slumped in Miss Kennedy's lap. And when he was hit the second time, she said, or the first time, it all happened in such a brief span, she said, "Oh my God, they killed my husband." I said, "Jack." And then after the third shot, the next thing that occurred, I was conscious. The Secret Service man, of course, the chauffeur had pulled out of the line. They said, get out of here. On the radio, they said, get us to a hospital immediately. And so we pulled out, of course, immediately as fast as we could go and got to the hospital. In the space of a few seconds, it's unbelievable what can happen. Martin, we went from great joy, anticipation, wonderful crowds, wonderful throngs, to great tragedy.
Governor, what are the thoughts that have come to you as you've lain here in this hospital bed recovering from your wound?
Oh, Martin, there have been many and many subjects. And I just wonder, you wonder all types of things. You wonder why his life was taken, why my life was spared. And I know, of course, that some now speculate that, well, it was me the man was after, not him. Of course, I have been campaigning all over Texas, all last year for 11 months, all this year riding parades, horseback, in cars, open cars, on street corners. I could have been an easy prey for anyone with no security, whatever. So I don't place any stead in this, except I think the man did what he intended to do, shoot both of us. And that's the only thing I can think.
What other reflections have you had, Governor?
Only that maybe, Martin, that the President of the United States, as a result of this great tragedy, has been asked to do something in death that he couldn't do in life. And that is to so shock and so stun a nation, and the people, and the world, of what's happening to us, of the cancerous growth that's being permitted to expand and enlarge itself upon the community and the society in which we live, that breeds a hatred, a bigotry, an intolerance, an indifference, a lawlessness, that is, I think, really an outward manifestation of what occurred here in Dallas. It could have occurred in any other city in America. It is nothing more than a manifestation of an extremism on both sides that basically is the genesis of our self-destruction if we're ever going to be destroyed. I am not the least fearful of any foreign enemy, so long as we have within ourselves not hate, but human understanding, not passion and prejudice, but reason and tolerance, and not ignorance, but knowledge, and the willingness to use that knowledge. This is the only answer I can give Martin why he's gone and I'm not.
Governor, when did they tell you that President Kennedy was dead?
They told me Saturday after I was conscious enough really to understand. It was no news. Nellie told me. And it was no news to me, though, because I was almost sure that he would be, after the two shots that I felt he'd taken. I hoped, as everyone else did, of course, and I hoped longer than most because I did not know until long after most people knew that he had succumbed. Because I personally felt that I had been killed too when I received my shot.
Yes. What were your first conscious thoughts about the president's death?
Martin, my really first conscious thoughts are still my same conscious thoughts. Just, my God, what a horrible, horrible tragedy. And how, in the space of a fleeting moment, things can change. Only before, here were two relatively young men, we were almost identical age, riding with what I would like to believe two of the most beautiful wives in this country. We've been together for 24 hours. They were happy. We were their host. We were proud to be their host in Texas. They had a tremendous welcome in San Antonio, in Houston, in Fort Worth, in Dallas. And then in a matter of a few seconds, this incident occurred that changed all our lives, changed the course of history for many people, and in what many divergent ways you never know. And it makes you reflect, ponder, wonder. If you do all that you ought to do, day by day, and trying to make whatever contribution you can to the society in which you live, because you never know when your day may come.
Governor, many Americans feel that we should have a memorial to the president. Have you thought about that? What kind?
Martin, I would most certainly think we ought to have a memorial to the president. I don't know what kind. It could be any kind. It could be marble. It could be granite. It could be stone. But really, I would hope that if the American people build a monument to President Kennedy, that they not do it in a sense of absolving themselves of the sins, which I think we all must suffer, for a lack of tolerance, a lack of understanding, for the prejudice, the passion, the hate, and the bigotry that permeates this whole society in which we live, that I think manifested itself here on Saturday. I think this was only one facet of it. We see it in the bombings of 5 little children, 5 little girls in Birmingham. It happens elsewhere in the United States. We, I think, above all else, if we erect such a monument, we ought to erect it as a monument to patience, to tolerance, to knowledge, to human understanding, to human dignity, freedom of the individual, and society that lives under law and under God, and where each can respect each other, notwithstanding that they disagree with them, because we have permitted the circumstances to occur in this country where fanaticism and extremism has become a fad, a fashionable fad. And this has to be destroyed. The people of reason, the people of logic, the people of intelligence are going to have to emerge. They're the people who are the silent people. They're the people who are not speaking. And their voice is going to have to become the dominant voice of this country.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy himself, Governor, was deeply conscious of exactly what you say and addressed himself to it. People. Governor, you point out the way the fate intervened to literally change the world in this moment. One way that it has changed the world is given the United States for the first time in our history a president from your state of Texas. I know how close you are to him.
I thought about that, Martin. I've been very close to the president, as you know. I first went to work for him in 1938. I worked for him again in 1949. We served in the uniform of the Navy as did President Kennedy. President Johnson and I were actually serving together in the Navy during the war. And I thought how ironic that in spite of the fact that I'd managed his campaign unsuccessfully for the presidency, that the man who defeated him, President Kennedy, named me Secretary of the Navy, a highly treasured position so far as I was concerned. And then on the very day that the president was assassinated and that I was wounded, the result of that was that Mr. Johnson became the president of the United States. And rather strange set of circumstances.
Tell us something about Lyndon Baines Johnson, Governor.
Martin, he is a person of many complexities, really. He is a person who will be viewed by some as being perhaps unlettered, and in some ways he is unlettered. But in other ways, he's probably as literate a person as you'll ever see in your life. As literate in terms of the understanding of human nature. He will not be the most well-read person you will ever know. But he will have a human instinct that I think will almost surpass any other person that you'll ever encounter. He is a person of great charm, of great poise. At times, and yet at times he can be almost brusque and rude. Always determined, always firm, always a man of his convictions, an indomitable and indefatigable worker, working always for perfection. Wouldn't you say that's a pretty good analysis of the two government? Those are the qualities that I would offhand think of, Martin, and I would point out first. I think, naturally, since he is now the President of the United States, that I should also point out that I think it can be fairly said that no man ever really assumed the burdens of that office. In many ways, better equipped than he. And that'll come as a strange statement, I'm sure, to some people in this country. But he's, I guess, 55 now. 8 years older now. He's 55. He was born in a rugged country of rugged parents. Saw many hard times. They can be even, I would say, poverty-stricken times. The days of his schooling were arduous. He did it himself. He pulled himself up by his own bootstraps. He worked with people of many nationalities, of many languages, of many economic views, and many economic levels. I think he understands the heartbeat of this nation, probably as well as any man that's ever been president of the United States. He's been a laborer, and not just to be one to say he's been one, but because he had to be one. He's been a school teacher, and he knows what it is to teach school in a country school, teaching a bunch of Latin students at Cotulla, Texas. He headed the NYA, Martin, when he was 26 years old.
National Youth Administration.
You remember under Roosevelt's days. And he was the youngest NYA administrator in the country. I think by any standards, is one of the finest jobs in the United States. There he worked again with young people. Saw the need for education. He has again this concept of the needs of youth and what it means and what contribution you can make to young minds and what those young minds can contribute to the welfare of this nation. He's walked among the great and the near great, as you well know. Yet I don't think it has ever changed him in the least. I think he still has the rough hewn, the rough exterior of the hill country from which he came and which he loves. I think he's in many ways as readable as an open book. Yet again, a very complex person. I think for the sake of this nation, I want to repeat two things that I said about him. First, he is very firm, and he's very determined. And I think in our dealings with foreign nations, I know of no man in my lifetime that I would rather be dealing my hand than him.
Governor, I don't want to tax your strength any further. I just want to thank you for a really memorable.
You were wonderful to come. I hope you understand this is the first moment that I have had to say anything or to express anything. We have Nellie expressed our mutual concern to Ms. Kennedy in a handwritten note that our son John took and delivered to her at the funeral ceremonies in Washington on Monday. But I'm grateful to you for your being here, and I'm just thankful I can see you again.
Thank you, Governor, and I'm so glad you're all right. And may I say to you, Mrs. Connally, that I want you to know how all through the nation, everyone admires the grace and the courage with which you conducted yourself in these terrible moments. Thank you. That's the conclusion of the interview with Governor John Connally at his bedside in the Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, Texas, where the governor is recovering from the wounds suffered in the attack by an assassin on himself and the President of the United States.
I'm working out here with some of our Olympic high jump hopefuls. Now, these people can really jump. They love to jump. See, and you can put more bounce into their jumps when you purchase U.S. Olympic coins. The coins provide valuable support for our Olympians and become priceless memories of the games. Watch this. Hey, look! A record! I did it! Check it out! Turn precious metal into Olympic medals. Support the home team.
Stress. It affects us all.
I have complete, total, emotional, and mental breakdown.
I had to give the guy the deed to my house for a paint shot.
This week, Gary Collins declares war on stress. Plus, the ladies of the morning. Bonnie Strauss with the women who wake up America. And more on the next Hour magazine.
Hour magazine, Monday morning at 9 on Channel 8.
Hello, I'm Ken Kirschbaum of the Dallas series. This year, 2,000 children will die because of child abuse or neglect. That's more than typhoid, smallpox, scarlet fever, diphtheria, and polio all combined. We have no medicine to prevent it, but you can help. The Mental Health Association of Dallas needs you to serve as a family advocate volunteer, to work with parents to help them become better parents. Become a family advocate volunteer. Call the Mental Health Association, 748-7825.
Washington, D.C., a city of monuments and monumental decisions. News 8 is committed to covering the stories that affect you in our nation's capital with Robert Riggs and the News 8 Washington Bureau. You're tuned into the changing political scene, in touch with the newsmakers who debate your future. Reporting from the nation's capital is a full-time job, and Robert Riggs and News 8 are there to keep you a step ahead.
The nation has a new president. Lyndon Johnson is the first Southerner since before the Civil War to hold the office. Outside of Washington and Texas, very few people know much about him. They get their first long look at him as he addresses a joint session of Congress, his first prepared address since President Kennedy's assassination.
From the chamber of the House of Representatives in the Capitol building here in Washington, D.C., we present the first address of President Lyndon B. Johnson to a joint session of the Congress. President Johnson is expected to enter the chamber momentarily. Senator Carl Hayden, Democrat of Arizona, the President pro tem of the Senate, is presiding at this joint session with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, John McCormick of Massachusetts. Joining the members of the Congress for this joint session are the various members of the President's Cabinet, the Supreme Court of the United States, the Diplomatic Corps, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States Armed Forces. The President already has arrived here at the Capitol building. and his entry into the House chamber will be announced shortly by the doorkeeper of the House, William B. Miller. The House chamber, of course, is jammed, as it always is for these joint sessions. The galleries are packed, filled with spectators. Mrs. Johnson is seated in the wife of the new president is seated in the box. And by special invitation with her are four of the most eminent Democrats of the land, Mayors Wagner of New York and Richard Daley of Chicago, former Governor David Lawrence of Pennsylvania, and Governor Carl Sanders of Georgia.
Members of the President's Cabinet.
And now the members of the Cabinet file down the aisle after they have been announced by Mr. Miller, the chief doorkeeper of the House. You see Secretary Rusk walking side by side with Adlai Stevenson, our ambassador to the UN. And now the President's brother, the Attorney General, President Kennedy's brother, the Attorney General. And the other members are filing in. Last in line is Secretary Celebrezzi of Health, Education, and Welfare, whose department was the last one created. Now we are the House is silent, awaiting the next announcement.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Members of the Congress, I have the high privilege and personal honor of presenting to you our former colleague, the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, members of the House, members of the Senate, my fellow Americans, all I have, I would have given gladly not to be standing here today. The greatest leader of our time has been struck down by the foulest deed of our time. Today, John Fitzgerald Kennedy lives on in the immortal words and works that he left behind. He lives on in the mind and memories of mankind. He lives on in the hearts of his countrymen. No words are sad enough to express our sense of loss. No words are strong enough to express our determination to continue the forward thrust of America that he began. The dream of conquering the vastness of space, the dream of partnership across the Atlantic and across the Pacific as well, the dream of a Peace Corps in less developed nations, the dream of education for all of our children, the dream of jobs for all who seek them and need them, the dream of care for our elderly, the dream of an all-out attack on mental illness, and above all, the dream of equal rights for all Americans, whatever their race or color. These and other American dreams have been vitalized by his drive and by his dedication. And now the ideas and the ideals which he so nobly represented must and will be translated into effective action. Under John Kennedy's leadership, this nation has demonstrated that it has the courage to seek peace, and it has the fortitude to risk war. We have proved that we are a good and reliable friend to those who seek peace and freedom. We have shown that we can also be a formidable foe to those who reject the path of peace, and those who seek to impose upon us are our allies, the yoke of tyranny. This nation will keep its commitments from South Vietnam to West Berlin. We will be unceasing in the search for peace, resourceful in our pursuit of areas of agreement, even with those with whom we differ, and generous and loyal to those who join with us in common cause. In this age when there can be no losers in peace and no victors in war, we must recognize the obligation to match national strength with national restraint. We must be prepared at one and the same time for both the confrontation of power and the limitation of power. We must be ready to defend the national interest and to negotiate the common interest. This is the path that we shall continue to pursue. Those who test our courage will find it strong, and those who seek our friendship will find it honorable. We will demonstrate anew that the strong can be just in the use of strength, and the just can be strong in the defense of justice. And let all know
We will extend no special privilege and impose no persecution. We will carry on the fight against poverty and misery and disease and ignorance in other lands and in our own. We will serve all the nation, not one sector or one sector or one group, but all Americans. These are the United States, a united people with a united purpose. Our American unity does not depend upon unanimity. We have differences, but now, as in the past, we can derive from those differences strength, not weakness, wisdom, not despair. Both as a people and a government, we can unite upon a program which is wise and just, enlightened and constructive. For 32 years, Capitol Hill has been my home. I have shared many moments of pride with you. Pride in the ability of the Congress of the United States to act, to meet any crisis, to distill from our differences strong programs of national action. An assassin's bullet has thrust upon me the awesome burden of the presidency. I am here today to say I need your help. I cannot bear this burden alone. I need the help of all Americans in all America. This nation has experienced a profound shock. And in this critical moment, it is our duty, yours and mine, as the government of the United States, to do away with uncertainty and doubt and delay, and to show that we are capable of decisive action. That from the brutal loss of our leader, we will derive not weakness, but strength. That we can and will act, and act now. From this chamber of representative government, let all the world know and none misunderstand that I rededicate this government to the unswerving support of the United Nations. To the honorable and determined execution of our commitments to our allies. To the maintenance of military strength second to none. To the defense of the strength and the stability of the dollar. expansion of our foreign trade. To the reinforcement of our programs of mutual assistance and cooperation in Asia and Africa. And to our Alliance for Progress in this hemisphere. On the 20th day of January in 1961, John F. Kennedy told his countrymen that our national work would not be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But he said, let us begin. Today, in this moment of new resolve, I would say to all my fellow Americans, let us continue. This is our challenge, not to hesitate, not to pause, not to turn about and linger over this evil moment, but to continue on our course so that we may fulfill the destiny that history has set for us. Our most immediate tasks are here on this hill. First, no memorial oration or eulogy could more eloquently honor President Kennedy's memory than the earliest possible passage of the Civil Rights Bill for which he fought so long. We have talked long enough in this country about equal rights. We have talked for 100 years or more. It is time now to write the next chapter and to write it in the books of law. I urge you again, as I did in 1957, and again in 1960, to enact a civil rights law so that we can move forward to eliminate from this nation every trace of discrimination and oppression that is based upon race or color. There could be no greater source of strength to this nation, both at home and abroad. And second, no act of ours could more fittingly continue the work of President Kennedy than the early passage of the tax bill for which he fought all this long year. This is a bill designed to increase our national income and federal revenues and to provide insurance against recession. That bill, if passed without delay, means more